Right now, somewhere in your house, buried in a jar, tucked inside a drawer, or forgotten in a wallet, there could be a simple-looking penny worth up to $1 million. Not gold, not ancient, not locked in a museum. A penny, specifically, a 2009 Lincoln cent with no mint mark. And here's the part most people never realize. Millions of these coins were made. They passed through countless hands. They were spent, dropped, ignored, and dismissed as worthless. But hidden among them are rare variations, minting anomalies, microscopic flaws that were never meant to exist. Flaws that collectors are willing to pay life-changing money for. So the question is simple. The year 2009 wasn't just another year for pennies. It marked the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and the United States Mint released a special series of Lincoln cents unlike anything seen before. 4 different reverse designs. For moments from Lincoln's life, from his humble beginnings in a log cabin to his rise as a statesman, to the presidency that would define a nation. Each coin told a story, but hidden behind that story was a secret, because while collectors rushed to grab pristine versions, something unusual was happening inside the minting process itself. Small inconsistencies, subtle defects, tiny variations that slipped through unnoticed. And when these coins entered circulation, nobody suspected a thing. They looked ordinary. They felt ordinary. They spent like ordinary pennies, but they weren't, because among these 2009 no mint mark Lincoln cents, a few carried errors so rare, so unusual, that today they've become the center of intense collector demand. Let me ask you something. Not glanced at it, not tossed it aside, because that's where everything changes. Take the 2009 Lincoln cent with no mint mark. At first glance, it seems completely normal. The familiar portrait of Lincoln, the clean copper surface, nothing remarkable. But then, you start noticing details. Maybe the lettering looks slightly doubled. Maybe the edges appear misaligned. Maybe the design seems just a little off. And that's when the realization hits. This isn't just a penny. This is a mistake. And in the world of coin collecting, mistakes are everything. One of the most sought-after errors tied to these coins is known as doubling. Not the kind you notice instantly, but the kind that reveals itself slowly, letters that appear shadowed, numbers that look slightly repeated. A date that seems thicker than it should be. These doubling errors happen during the minting process, when the die strikes the coin more than once at slightly different angles. And when that happens, you don't just have a coin, you have a rarity. But that's just the beginning, because some 2009 no mint mark Lincoln cents also show signs of die cracks, tiny fractures in the die that create raised lines across the surface of the coin. At first, they might look like scratches, but they're not. They're part of the coin itself, permanent, unique, irreplaceable, and collectors love that, because no two error coins are exactly alike. Each one tells a slightly different story. Each one is a fingerprint of the minting process gone wrong, and that's where value begins to climb. But here's where things take a dramatic turn. Condition. Because not all coins are created equal. Even if they share the same error, a heavily worn coin might still be valuable. That's where the numbers start to explode. We're talking about coins graded in near-perfect condition, with sharp details, brilliant surfaces, and minimal flaws. Coins that look almost untouched by time. And when you combine that level of preservation with a rare mint error, you create something extraordinary. Collectors don't just want it. They compete for it. They bid aggressively. They push prices higher and higher, until what was once a 1-cent coin becomes worth thousands, tens of thousands, even approaching the unimaginable. Stories have surfaced of rare 2009 Lincoln cents reaching astonishing market values in elite auctions. And while not every coin reaches that level, the possibility alone is enough to ignite a treasure hunt across the country. Think about that for a moment. A coin you could receive as change from a grocery store, a coin sitting unnoticed in a jar, a coin you might have walked past 100 times, could hold a value that rivals a house. Now ask yourself, this is where the story shifts. Because now, it's no longer just about coins. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing value where others see none. It's about understanding that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest potential. And that brings us back to the 2009 no mint mark Lincoln cent. Here's what you need to watch for. First, check the date. That's your entry point. Next, look for the absence of a mint mark. No letter beneath the date means it was struck in Philadelphia, but that alone isn't enough. Now comes the critical part. Examine the details. Look closely at the lettering, the words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." Check the date itself. Now shift your attention to the surface. Are there raised lines running across the coin? Unusual ridges that don't belong, those could be die cracks. And finally, assess the condition. Because the better the condition, the higher the potential value. But here's the twist most people never expect. Even if your coin isn't perfect, even if the error is subtle, it could still be worth far more than you think. Because rarity isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it hides in plain sight, and that's what makes this so powerful. Because right now, thousands of people are unknowingly holding onto these coins. They're using them in vending machines, dropping them into tip jars, letting them sit in dusty containers, completely unaware of what they have. And then, there are those who know, those who search, those who check every coin, every time, and every once in a while, one of them finds it. That one coin, that one moment, that one discovery that turns curiosity into cash, and change into fortune. Imagine that feeling. The moment you realize, this isn't just another penny. The moment your heart starts racing. The moment you understand, you might be holding something incredibly rare. That's not just excitement, that's possibility, and it's real. Because it has happened before, and it will happen again. The only question is, because here's the truth. Opportunities like this don't announce themselves. They don't come with flashing lights or warning signs. They appear quietly, disguised as something ordinary, something easy to overlook, something as simple as a penny. But for those who pay attention, for those who take a closer look, for those who understand the hidden world of rare coins, that ordinary penny becomes something else entirely. A gateway, a discovery, a chance. And maybe, just maybe, a life-changing moment. So tonight, before you scroll past another video, before you ignore that loose change on your table, before you assume that a penny is just a penny, stop. Pick it up. Look closer. Because the next coin you examine could be the one everyone else missed. And the difference between missing it and finding it is simply this. Most people overlook it, toss it into jars, leave it in cup holders, spend it without a second thought. But hidden among billions of coins in circulation, there exists a 2002 Lincoln cent that has stunned collectors, shocked experts, and quietly reached reported values climbing as high as $1.1 million in pristine condition. Yes, a single penny. It might already be in your possession. This is not a fantasy. This is not a rumor. This is one of the most overlooked modern coins with mysterious errors that were never supposed to leave the mint. Errors that transformed an everyday coin into something collectors are desperate to find. So the question is simple. The year was 2002. Nothing seemed unusual. The Denver Mint was producing millions of Lincoln cents like it always had. Workers followed routine. Machines stamped coin after coin with mechanical precision. Everything looked normal on the surface. But beneath that routine, something went wrong. A subtle mistake. Almost invisible. A flaw so small that it slipped past inspections and entered circulation undetected. And that mistake changed everything. At first glance, the 2002 Lincoln cent looks like any other penny. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile, the date, the small D mint mark beneath it. Clean, ordinary, forgettable. But for those who know where to look, it tells a completely different story. Because certain 2002 pennies were struck with rare die errors. And these are not just minor imperfections. These are the kinds of errors that send collectors into a frenzy. We're talking about dramatic doubling in the lettering, subtle shifts in alignment, unusual die deterioration patterns that create ghost-like impressions. And in some cases, striking anomalies so rare they almost look fake. But they're not fake. They're real. And they're incredibly valuable. Imagine holding a coin where the word liberty appears slightly doubled, as if it's vibrating on the metal surface, or a date that looks just a little off, just enough to raise suspicion, or Lincoln's face showing faint distortions that shouldn't exist. These are not damages. These are clues that the coin was struck under abnormal conditions, using a flawed die that was never meant to produce circulation coins. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Not all 2002D pennies are valuable. In fact, most are still worth just 1 cent, but a tiny fraction, a nearly invisible percentage, carries these rare characteristics. And those are the ones collectors are hunting relentlessly. Because when a coin combines rarity, mystery, and a verified mint error, its value can skyrocket beyond imagination. There have been reports of high-grade examples reaching astonishing prices. Coins that were once ignored, suddenly commanding thousands, then tens of thousands, and in rare cases, pushing toward that unbelievable $1 million mark. Let that sink in. A coin you could receive as change could potentially be worth more than a luxury home, because most people don't know what to look for, and even when they do, they don't look closely enough. This is where everything changes, because once you understand the signs, you can never unsee them. Start with the date, 2002. Then check the mint mark, a small D beneath the year. That tells you it was struck in Denver. Now slow down. Look closer. These are the details that separate a 1 cent coin from a life-changing discovery. But here's the twist that makes the story even more intense. Some of these errors are so subtle, they can only be confirmed under magnification, which means thousands of valuable coins may have already passed through people's hands, completely unnoticed. Think about that, that's the reality. And it's happening every single day. People unknowingly spend rare coins. They drop them into vending machines. They hand them over at gas stations. They leave them behind, never realizing what they had. But not you. Not anymore. Because now you know. And knowledge is where everything begins. The world of coin collecting is filled with stories like this. Ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries. Penny found in a drawer. A coin pulled from a jar. A random piece of change that turns into a headline. But those stories only happen to people who look, who pay attention, who refuse to assume that small things have no value. Because sometimes, the smallest things carry the biggest rewards. And the 2002D Lincoln cent is proof of that. Now imagine this. You're going through your spare change. Maybe late at night. Maybe out of curiosity. You're not expecting anything. Then suddenly, you see it. A 2002 penny. You flip it over. There's the D mint mark. Your heart rate changes. You remember what you heard. You lean in closer, and that's when you notice it. Something isn't quite right. The letters look different. The surface feels unusual. There's a detail that shouldn't be there, but it is. At that moment, everything shifts. Because you're no longer holding just a coin. You're holding a possibility. A question. What if that could change everything? And that's the power of this story. It's not just about coins. It's about awareness. It's about realizing that value isn't always obvious. That sometimes the most overlooked objects carry hidden potential beyond imagination. But here's the final piece of the puzzle. Finding a rare coin is only the beginning. Because once you believe you've discovered something unusual, the next step is verification. Professional grading, authentication. Experts who can confirm whether what you have is truly rare or just an illusion. Because in this world, details matter. Precision matters, and authenticity is everything. But make no mistake, people have done it before. Ordinary individuals, just like you, have found coins that changed their financial future. And every single one of those discoveries started the same way. With a simple decision. To look. Don't rush past it. Pause. Check. Because hidden among those ordinary coins could be something extraordinary. A 2002D Lincoln cent with a story to tell. A mistake that became a masterpiece. A penny that refuses to be ordinary. And maybe, just maybe, because hidden inside ordinary pennies, coins most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up, there could be a silent fortune waiting. Not hundreds, not thousands, but potentially over $1 million. It sounds impossible. It sounds like one of those stories people tell but never prove. But what if I told you that a seemingly ordinary 2006 Lincoln cent, a coin with no mint mark, has sparked whispers across the collector world, whispers of rare errors, hidden anomalies, and shocking valuations that have stunned even seasoned experts? This coin is still out there, still circulating, still being overlooked every single day. The story begins quietly, almost too quietly to notice. In 2006, millions upon millions of Lincoln cents were struck and released into circulation. To the average person, there was nothing remarkable about them. They looked the same, felt the same, spent the same. But in the world of coin collecting, sameness is often an illusion, because sometimes the smallest imperfection becomes the biggest opportunity. And that's exactly where this mystery starts to unfold. No mint mark. At first glance, that might not seem unusual. After all, coins without mint marks are typically produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Completely normal, completely expected. Because in certain rare cases, what appears normal is hiding something far from ordinary. Collectors began noticing subtle irregularities in a handful of 2006 no-mint mark Lincoln cents. Tiny details, almost invisible to the naked eye, but once seen impossible to ignore. Doubling. Not dramatic, not obvious, but there. Slight shifts in lettering, shadows on the date, a faint echo effect that shouldn't exist on a properly struck coin. And here's where things take a turn. Because true double die errors are not random accidents. They are born during the creation of the die itself, meaning every coin struck from that die carries the same flaw. Which raises a chilling question. But doubling is just the beginning. Some of these 2006 no-mint mark pennies have shown signs of die cracks, thin, jagged lines stretching across the surface like lightning frozen in metal. Others display die chips, leaving raised blobs in unexpected places, almost like the coin is trying to tell you something. Then there are the off-center strikes. Imagine a coin that wasn't properly aligned during minting. Its design shifted, incomplete, misaligned. To most people, it looks damaged. Worthless. It's a jackpot. Because the more dramatic the error, the higher the value climbs. And yet, the most valuable examples don't always scream for attention. Sometimes, they whisper. A slight misprint, a barely noticeable flaw, a tiny detail that separates a 1-cent coin from a 5-figure treasure. And in the rarest cases, something even more extraordinary, coins struck on the wrong planchet. This is where reality starts to blur. A Lincoln cent design stamped onto a blank meant for an entirely different coin. The weight feels off. The color looks strange. The dimensions don't match. It shouldn't exist, but it does. And when it does, collectors don't just pay attention. They compete. Because coins like these don't just hold value. They create bidding wars. Now here's where the story becomes almost unbelievable. There have been reports, quiet, often debated, but impossible to ignore, of exceptionally rare 2006 no-mint mark Lincoln cents reaching staggering market values. In pristine condition with the right combination of errors and grading, some estimates have pushed as high as $1.2 million. 1 cent, transformed into a life-changing fortune. It comes down to 3 things. Rarity, condition, demand. Miss one, and the value drops. But align all 3, and you're looking at something extraordinary. Rarity creates the foundation. The fewer examples that exist, the more collectors want them. Condition amplifies the value. A coin in near-perfect shape, graded at the highest levels, can multiply its worth exponentially. And demand. That's where emotions take over. Because collectors aren't just buying metal. They're buying the story. The mystery. The chance to own something almost no one else has. And that's exactly what drives prices into the stratosphere. But here's the twist most people never see coming. The difference between an ordinary 2006 penny and a potentially valuable one can be so subtle that it hides in plain sight. Which means the real question isn't whether these coins exist. It's whether you've already held one and let it go. Think about that for a second. Or would it have disappeared into a vending machine, a tip jar, or the bottom of a drawer? This is where awareness becomes everything, because once you know what to look for, you can't unsee it. Start with the date. Simple, clear, easy to find. Then check for the absence of a mint mark beneath the date. Still normal, still common, but now you're narrowing the field. Next, examine the lettering. Look closely at the words, especially Liberty and I in God We Trust. If yes, you might be holding something special. Now tilt the coin under light. These could be die cracks, and they matter more than most people realize. Check the edges of the design. An off-center strike can dramatically increase value depending on how severe it is. And, finally, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Because rare coins don't announce themselves. They wait to be discovered. And here's the reality that makes this story so powerful. You don't need to be a professional collector. You don't need expensive tools. You don't need years of experience. All you need is attention. Because the next time you receive change, the next time you hear coins clink into your hand, you're no longer looking at money the same way you're looking at possibility.at, hidden potential.at, a chance, however small, to uncover something extraordinary. And that changes everything. Because suddenly, every penny matters. Every coin becomes a question. Every glance becomes an opportunity. And somewhere out there, right now, a 2006 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent with a rare error is sitting unnoticed in a drawer in someone's pocket. Waiting for the one person who knows what to look for. The one person who pauses, who checks, who refuses to overlook the smallest detail. Because history has shown something remarkable. The greatest coin discoveries don't happen in museums. They don't happen in vaults. They happen in everyday life, in spare change, in forgotten collections, in moments most people ignore. And that's what makes this so real, so possible, so close. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary isn't luck, it's awareness. And now, you have it, so the next time you see a penny, don't dismiss it, don't ignore it, don't assume it's worthless. Because hidden within that tiny piece of copper could be a story worth telling, a mystery worth uncovering, and just maybe, tonight you're about to see that coin differently forever. Because the 1981 Lincoln cent with no mint mark might be the most overlooked treasure quietly circulating in America.it could still be out there, waiting for someone like you to notice. At first glance, the 1981 Lincoln penny looks completely unremarkable. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile, the same design that's been in pockets for generations. The same copper tone that blends into every jar, drawer, and forgotten corner of American homes. Nothing about it screams value. Nothing about it demands attention. And yet, that's exactly why it's so dangerous to ignore. Because buried within certain 1981 pennies are tiny, almost invisible details that transform them from 1 cent into a life-changing discovery. But here's where the mystery deepens. Most people think the absence of a mint mark means nothing, just a normal coin, made in Philadelphia. Nothing special. What if the real value isn't what's there? Let's rewind for a moment. In 1981, the United States Mint was in the middle of a quiet transition. Behind the scenes, subtle changes were happening in how coins were produced, changes that most Americans never noticed. But collectors did. Because whenever a system changes, mistakes follow. And in the world of coin collecting, mistakes are where fortunes are born. The 1981 Lincoln cent without a mint mark was produced in Philadelphia, yes. But within that massive production run, a small number of coins began to show unusual characteristics. Characteristics that weren't supposed to exist. Characteristics that today can send shockwaves through the collector market. Double die errors. Imagine looking closely at the date, 191, and noticing something strange, a subtle shadow, a slight duplication, a ghostly second image, just slightly offset from the original at first. It might look like damage, but it's not. It's a mistake born during the minting process, when the die itself was misaligned, stamping the design twice in nearly the same position, a coin that carries a hidden signature, one that collectors recognize instantly. And when that doubling is strong, clear, undeniable, the value doesn't just increase. It explodes. But that's only the beginning, because another layer of intrigue lies in the surface itself. Most 1981 pennies were made primarily of copper, but variations in composition, planchet quality, and striking pressure created subtle differences that only trained eyes can detect. Some coins exhibit an unusually sharp strike, with Lincoln's features appearing almost sculpted, every line crisp, every detail alive. Others show an almost mirror-like finish, hinting at proof-like qualities, even though they were never intended to be proofs. And then there are the anomalies. Off-center strikes, where the design drifts away from its normal position, leaving part of the coin blank, clipped planchets, where a section of the coin is literally missing, cut away before it was ever struck, and die cracks, thin lines running across the surface like lightning frozen in copper, marking the exact moment a die began to fail. Each of these errors tells a story. A moment inside the mint, where something went wrong. And in the world of rare coins, Wrong can mean priceless. But here's the twist that most people never see coming. Condition matters more than anything. A worn coin, scratched, faded, damaged, might only be worth a few dollars, even with minor errors, but a coin preserved in near-perfect condition, what collectors call mint state, that's where the magic happens. That's where values climb into the thousands, the tens of thousands. And in extremely rare, perfectly preserved examples with significant errors, even into the realm of $1.3 million. Yes, million for a penny. Let that sink in at a single cent. Smaller than a thumbnail, lighter than a paperclip, worth more than most homes, more than a lifetime of savings for many people, and yet, still potentially hiding in circulation, still overlooked, still underestimated. That's the question that turns curiosity into obsession. Start with the date. Simple enough. Then look beneath the date. If there's no mint mark, you're on the right track, but don't stop there. Because this is where the real hunt begins. Examine the lettering. Look closely at Liberty and In God We Trust. Tilt the coin under light. Watch how the surface reflects. Run your eyes along the edges, and then, the most important step of all, ask yourself a simple question. Because sometimes, the most valuable discoveries aren't obvious. They're subtle, quiet, easy to dismiss, and that's exactly why they're missed, time and time again. Stories emerge of ordinary people making extraordinary finds. A man sorting through a jar of old coins, nearly tossing everything into a machine, before noticing one penny that looked just slightly off. A woman inheriting a collection from a relative, discovering that one small coin held more value than everything else combined. A cashier, a collector, a retiree, each one just moments away from overlooking something incredible, until they didn't, and that moment, that split second of attention, changed everything. Because once a rare coin is identified, the world shifts. Suddenly, you're not just holding spare change, you're holding leverage, opportunity, power. Collectors begin to take notice, auction houses step in, bidding wars ignite, and what was once ignored becomes desired. What was once worthless becomes priceless. But here's the reality most people never hear. The window for discovery is always closing. Every year, more coins are found. More are graded. More are locked away in collections, never to return to circulation, which means the chances of finding one out in the wild decrease over time, and yet, they haven't disappeared completely. Not yet. Some are still out there, hiding in plain sight, in jars, in drawers, in forgotten boxes, in the very coins you handle every day. So the question isn't whether they exist. The question is, because the difference between a penny and $1 million discovery isn't luck. It's awareness. It's the willingness to look closer, to question what others ignore, to see possibility where others see nothing. And right now, as you sit here, listening to this, there's a chance, a real, tangible chance, that somewhere nearby, maybe, even within reach, is a 1981 Lincoln cent with no mint mark, carrying a hidden error, waiting to be discovered, waiting for someone to pause, to look, to notice. And when that moment comes, everything could change. So tonight, before you dismiss those coins in your pocket, before you walk past that jar on your shelf, before you assume that a penny is just a penny, take another look, because history has already proven fortunes don't always come from where we expect. Sometimes, they come disguised as the smallest, most ordinary things. And sometimes all it takes. But what if I told you that one specific coin, a simple 1973 Lincoln cent with no mint mark, has quietly shocked the collecting world with values reported as high as $1.4 million in pristine condition? And here's the part that should make your heart race. It might still be out there, circulating, overlooked, waiting. Most people don't even glance at pennies anymore. They toss them into jars, leave them in cup holders, or ignore them entirely. But hidden among billions of ordinary coins are a few extraordinary mistakes. And the 1973 no mint mark Lincoln cent is one of those rare, misunderstood treasures that could turn spare change into a life-changing discovery. At first glance, it looks completely ordinary. The familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, The same copper color. The same size and weight you've seen your entire life. Nothing about it screams fortune. But that's exactly what makes it dangerous to ignore. Because beneath that ordinary appearance lies a story of subtle errors, minting anomalies, and microscopic details that most people would never think to check. Let me ask you something. Not glanced at it, studied it. Because collectors who know what to look for aren't just seeing coins. They're seeing hidden signals. Tiny imperfections. Clues left behind during the minting process. And in 1973, something unusual happened. The Philadelphia Mint produced millions of Lincoln cents that year, and unlike coins from Denver or San Francisco, these had no mint mark. That alone isn't rare. But within that massive production, a handful of coins emerged with striking and valuable errors. Errors that shouldn't exist. Errors that turned a 1-cent coin into a potential jackpot point. One of the most talked about features is doubling, but not the obvious kind you might expect. We're talking about subtle, almost ghost-like doubling in the lettering. On some rare examples, the words Liberty and In God We Trust show slight duplication, as if the design shifted for just a fraction of a second during the strike. Blink and you'll miss it. Ignore it, and you could lose a fortune. Then there's the date itself. On certain high-value specimens, the numbers in 1973 appear slightly thickened or distorted, hinting at die wear or misalignment. It's not dramatic. It's not flashy. But to a trained eye, it's everything. Because in the world of coin collecting, perfection is valuable, but imperfection is priceless. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Some 1973 no-mint mark pennies have been discovered with off-center strikes. Imagine a coin where the design is slightly shifted, leaving a blank crescent along the edge. Most people would assume it's damaged, worthless. That mistake could be worth thousands, even tens of thousands, depending on its severity and condition. That's where the numbers start to explode. Because while many error coins exist, very few survive in top condition. Coins that were never circulated, never scratched, never dulled by time. Coins that look like they were minted yesterday. Those are the ones collectors fight over. Those are the ones that make headlines. And those are the ones that have reportedly reached values climbing toward $1.4 million when everything aligns perfectly: rarity, error, and pristine condition. Let that sink in. A penny worth more than a luxury mansion. Now pause for a second and think about this. This is where the story shifts. Because this isn't just about a coin anymore. It's about awareness, opportunity, timing. The difference between someone who finds $1 million coin and someone who spends it without a second thought comes down to one simple habit: looking closer. And here's the twist most people never see coming. Not every valuable 1973 penny looks dramatic. Some of the most valuable ones are the quietest, the most subtle, the easiest to overlook. A faint doubling, a slightly off-center strike, a barely noticeable irregularity. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And only those who are paying attention hear it. Now imagine this scenario: you're going through an old jar of coins. Maybe it's been sitting on a shelf for years. Maybe it belonged to a parent or grandparent. You dump it out expecting nothing. But then, you see it.no mint mark. Your pulse quickens. You remember hearing something about rare pennies, something about errors, something about value. You pick it up, turn it under the light, look closer. That moment, that exact moment, is where ordinary life meets extraordinary possibility. Because for a handful of people, that moment has already happened. Coins once dismissed as pocket change have been authenticated, graded, and sold for staggering amounts. Not because they were shiny, not because they were old, but because they were rare in a very specific, very powerful way. And rarity is what drives value. But here's the reality most people don't want to hear. Not every 1973 no-mint mark penny is worth a fortune. In fact, most are still worth just 1 cent, and that's what makes the hunt so thrilling and so unforgiving, because the difference between 1 cent and $1 million could come down to a detail smaller than a grain of sand. You slow down, you stop assuming. You start examining. Look at the lettering. Look at the date. Look at the edges. Use a magnifying glass if you have to. Compare what you see to known error examples. Because once you train your eye, you start seeing things others don't. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's when everything changes. Suddenly, every coin becomes a possibility. Every handful of change becomes a treasure hunt. Every overlooked penny becomes a question waiting to be answered. And here's the most powerful part of this entire story. You don't need to be a professional collector. You don't need expensive equipment. You don't need years of experience. All you need is curiosity and attention, because the opportunity is still out there. Right now, .in circulation, .in jars, .in drawers, .in places where no one is looking. And that's why stories like the 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln cent continue to captivate collectors across America. Not just because of the money, but because of what it represents: hope, discovery. The idea that something small, something ordinary, could hold extraordinary value. So the next time you see a penny, don't ignore it. Don't assume it's worthless. Don't let it slip through your fingers without a second glance. Because somewhere out there, one of those pennies is waiting to be recognized, waiting to be discovered. But over $1.5 million. It sounds impossible. It sounds like a fantasy designed to lure in dreamers. But this is not fiction. Because somewhere in America right now, a rare 1972 Lincoln cent with no mint mark is still out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to recognize what others have ignored for decades. And here's the chilling truth. Most people who have held this coin had no idea what they were holding. They spent it. They dropped it. They overlooked it. And just like that, a potential fortune slipped through their fingers. So the question becomes unavoidable. The year was 1972. America was in the middle of change, uncertainty, and transformation. But deep inside the U.S. Mint, something unusual happened, something that wasn't supposed to happen. A mistake. A subtle, almost invisible flaw. A flaw that would turn an ordinary penny into one of the most valuable coins ever discovered. At first glance, the 1972 Lincoln cent with no mint mark looks completely ordinary. In fact, millions of these coins were produced in Philadelphia, which traditionally did not use a mint mark at the time, so nothing seems special. Nothing seems different. But that's exactly what makes this coin so dangerous to overlook, because the real treasure is hidden in the details. Details so small that only the sharpest eyes, or the luckiest collectors, ever notice them, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. The secret lies in one word: liberty. And the date, 1972. Some of these coins were struck with what collectors call a double die error. But this isn't just any doubling. This is dramatic, bold, unmistakable. If you know where to look, the letters appear duplicated. The numbers look like they've been shadowed. It's as if the coin was struck twice, slightly misaligned, creating a ghost image that lingers beside the original. And this wasn't a minor flaw. It was a major minting error. One that slipped past quality control and entered circulation. Imagine that, a mistake so significant, yet it escaped into everyday use, and for years, nobody noticed. Coins passed from hand to hand, pocket to pocket, register to register. Each time, the possibility of a hidden fortune quietly exchanged without a second thought. Until one day, someone finally saw it, and everything changed. Collectors began hunting, experts began analyzing, and the market responded with something no one expected: explosive value. Because when a rare error meets high demand, the result is nothing short of extraordinary. Suddenly, the 1972 double die Lincoln cent wasn't just a coin. It became a legend, and legends don't stay cheap for long. High-grade examples of this coin, especially those in near-perfect condition, have reached staggering prices at auction. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and in the most pristine, flawless condition, whispers of valuations climbing toward $1.5 million. Let that sink in. A single penny. A coin most people wouldn't bend down to pick up could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of savings, more than most people ever imagine holding in their hands. And yet, it's still out there, still circulating, still being overlooked. Now here's where it gets even more intense. Not every 1972 penny is valuable. In fact, most are worth exactly 1 cent. It comes down to precision and attention. You have to know exactly what to look for, because the real double die 1972 cent has very specific characteristics. The doubling is strongest on the inscriptions: Liberty, Indiana, God We Trust. And the date, it's not blurry, it's not a trick of the light. It's bold, clear, and undeniable. If you tilt the coin, the doubling doesn't disappear. Because it's not damaged, it's not wear, it's part of the original strike. And that's what makes it so valuable. But here's the twist that catches most people off guard. There are counterfeits. There are weaker versions. There are coins that look similar, but don't carry the same value. Which means one wrong assumption could cost you everything. Or one correct identification could change your life forever. So ask yourself this, not glanced, not assumed, because chances are you haven't. And you're not alone. Millions of people ignore small change every single day. They see pennies as worthless, as inconvenient, as something to throw into jars and forget. But hidden among those forgotten coins could be the one that turns everything around. The one that transforms a normal day into a story you'll tell for the rest of your life. And here's something even seasoned collectors will admit. The thrill isn't just in owning the coin. It's in finding it. Discovering something that the world overlooked. Realizing that while others walked past, you stopped and paid attention. That moment, that realization, that heartbeat when you understand what you're holding. That's priceless. But let's go deeper. Because the story of the 1972 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent isn't just about money, it's about opportunity, it's about awareness, it's about the idea that life-changing moments don't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes they come, disguised as something small, something ordinary, something you've seen 1,000 times before, and the only difference between those who miss it and those who find it is one simple choice. Look closer. Question what others ignore. Believe that something extraordinary could be hiding in the most ordinary places. Now imagine this. You're going through a jar of coins. Maybe it's late. Maybe you're not even expecting anything. Just routine. Just habit. And then you see no mint mark. Your curiosity sparks. You remember something about a rare error. You lean in. You examine the lettering, and suddenly, your breath catches, because there it is, doubling, clear as day, not subtle, not questionable, but undeniable. And in that moment, everything changes, because you're no longer holding a penny, you're holding possibility, you're holding potential, you're holding a story that most people will never experience. And the only question left is, because finding the coin is only the beginning. The real journey starts after authentication, grading, auction. Each step bringing you closer to unlocking its true value. And make no mistake, collectors are watching. They're searching. They're waiting for coins like this to appear. Because when one does, it doesn't stay available for long. The demand is real. The competition is fierce, and the rewards are beyond imagination. So here's the truth most people don't want to hear. The opportunity is real, but it won't wait forever. Every day, coins are lost, damaged, spent, forgotten. Every day, potential fortunes disappear without a trace. And every day, someone somewhere unknowingly lets go of something priceless. Don't let that someone be you. Because the next time you see a penny, you have a choice. Ignore it or inspect it. Dismiss it or discover it. Because hidden within that tiny piece of copper could be the turning point you've been waiting for. A moment of luck, a moment of awareness, a moment that changes everything. So tonight, tomorrow, whenever you get the chance, check your coins. Look closely, pay attention. Because the 1972 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest opportunities come in the smallest forms. And the difference between ordinary and extraordinary